So as I mentioned, creating our ideal customer is really about creating our ideal customer target. So taking that archery analogy, what we're going to do is have our center point of our target, and then we're going to create 5 rings out from that. So with our 6 criteria, the first 3 being business, market, and geography, and our second 3 being personality, history, and project. What you're going to do in qualification is basically move through these 6 criteria. So you're going to ask some questions or try to identify whether or not they're in a business you want to work with, whether they're in a market that you think that you can be successful in, whether their geography lines up with how you want to work, whether their personality fits your type of work style, whether their history doesn't deter you or not from working with them, and whether their project is a good fit. Like let's say, for instance, business becomes a yes, that they're established, they've got the type of size you want to work with when it comes to how many employees they are, they're in the type of market that you're focusing your business around. Well, let's say, for instance, these questions start coming in and you basically decide that the business lines up with your ideal customer. So at that point, you're going to basically be moving in on your target, and you're going to get a yes to one of these 6 major criteria, and you're going to start moving towards the center of your target. Now let's say as you start to identify their market, that they're in maybe a market you think you can be successful in. So as you start asking questions and you realize that they're in the type of market that you want to be working within, then that's going to help you move towards the center of your target. So your point's going to move from the outer circle in one circle as you start to realize that yes, they're in a business that I want to work in, they're in a market that you want to work in. But let's say, for instance, you get here to geography and you really like to work with clients that are only local to your business, and you find out that the business maybe operates in a different state or a different country that you currently operate in. So geography, for this particular example, is going to get an X. And so instead of moving in closer to your ideal customer, you're going to basically stay where you're at. And as you start talking to this customer, you might realize that they're really friendly and you really like working with them. And so they get a check on the personality and they move in yet another layer towards your ideal customer target. So as you continue to discuss with your customer, you realize that they've got a really good back history and they've made significant investments in their websites before, but maybe their previous web designer actually went out of business and they're no longer working with them. So you're going to get a check for history. And then let's say they sent over a basic needs requirement ahead of time, and it looks like everything that's on that needs requirement list are things that you're really good at. So you're going to get a check here as well. So now as you move through this process, this particular prospective customer is going to move all the way into basically your second ring outside of your bullseye. So what this is going to do is it's going to give you a visual representation of how close this customer is to your ideal customer. So with this particular project, we got in pretty close to our bullseye. We're not an exact bullseye. And I don't think you're looking for an exact bullseye on every single project, but the more in demand you are as a web professional, the more specific you are going to want to be around getting projects that line up and fit your exact ideal customer. Typically what happens is if you end up wasting a lot of time on customers that are out here, and they're not really good fits for your business, you're going to get more and more of those different types of customers. Usually customer types, especially when it comes to market and niche and size of business, kind of are comfortable working with people that are doing the same. For instance, if you're working with a startup business that's struggling to make $50,000 or $100,000 a year, those businesses typically hang out together. And so if you start working with those businesses, even though maybe your ideal customer target says that you want to work with businesses that are making $1 million a year or more, then you're going to typically kind of swarm to those businesses that are not necessarily your ideal target. So every time you stray from your ideal target, you're potentially going to get more clients of that type. And every time you work with customers that are closer in to your ideal target, you're probably going to get more of these types of customers. For example, every time we would sign a restaurant customer, that would be one more restaurant website that we had out there in circulation. And restaurant owners like to look at other restaurant owners' websites, and so that'd be a big part of how we would continue to get business from other restaurant owners. So let's say, for instance, even though my ideal target was restaurants, if I was working with a bunch of manufacturing companies and I kept launching manufacturing company websites, chances are other restaurants wouldn't be attracted to my type of work because I'm doing manufacturing companies. So typically what we want to do is when we set our ideal target, when we basically say, we put out there that we want to work with this type of customer, that every time we stray from that, it's just going to get us further away from working with that ideal target. So when you're thinking about your prospective customer and you're qualifying them, this is really important for you to understand, because you want to move your potential customers towards your ideal customer. You want to pass on projects that aren't a good fit for you, and that's why we put this in the very, very first interaction. That qualifying your prospect against your ideal target is one of the very first things that you do in a scheduled meeting.